I've heard you use this term resiliency. We talk about regenerative, basically putting inputs back in and creating biodiversity. But I'm really curious on your take around resiliency of a farm too. Like, you managed to not only survive a difficult period with the pandemic, where I had firsthand experience of this. The people I were getting my beef from, they were local farmers, and they were basically out. They couldn't get a processing date in a plant for, I think they were saying maybe 12 to 18 months. And I'm driving around, all I can see is cows, but I can't get food. And you shore up some resiliency on White Oaks pastures, maybe a different way. And maybe that's something inspiring and hopeful for people to hear about too. So what's the story there in terms of your resiliency?
Well, I don't know exactly how to answer that. I consider resiliency to be a starring attribute. If when I die, nobody's going to say he was brilliant, or he was beautiful to look at, or he could, get a football down the field faster than anybody else. But I believe they'll say that I would stick with it and make it happen. And that's resilience to me. It's the determination. When I was a kid, I don't want to digress too far here, but we used to talk about grit. Have you ever heard the term grit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people hadn't heard that term, and I was shocked. We have a lot of young people that work here, and I said something about grit one day, and they didn't know what I meant. And I explained it to them. And it's incredible to me how in one or two generations, when I was a kid, being told you had grit was the best thing you could say to somebody. And today, young people don't know what it means. And I think that's very telling. I think that we have let resiliency, determination, grit kind of go by the wayside in our society. And maybe it's because it's not really politically, what's the word, smart. I mean, it's a little combative, and those things are frowned on these days. But I think resiliency, the ability to stick with it and get the job done, is a very important attribute.
Yeah, I think this ability to stay responsive and think on your toes and not be victimized by what's going on. Like when the pandemic hit, for example, like, oh no, what are we going to do? We can't do anything. It's like, okay, this is difficult. What are we going to do? I know you literally set up processing plants on your farm, right? To kind of avoid the shutdowns. Like that's an amazing, and in hindsight, borderline genius pivot, because it creates resiliency again. You can't get a date. Oh, guess what? Well, we have our own thing set up. And I think, that ability to dig, and of course, not everybody's going to have options for that, but it models a state of mind. It models an attribute that I must agree, I admit, and, in comparison to yourself, you're more of an elder. I'm a lot younger, but then there's a younger generation, beneath me. And it seems to have bred into our institutions this virtuous victimhood that all we do is point the finger of blaming and complaining, and life should be easy, so that when it gets hard, we don't know what to do. We don't have that grit. We've come a little bit too soft, instead of being able to be a little rough around the edges, rough and ready and rugged and adaptable to make it work. So I think there's some wisdom in that about, just getting our hands dirty, rolling the sleeves up, and some good old fashioned hard work. Hello friends, if you enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the entire thing by heading to this link over here, or you can find us wherever you find podcasts by searching Radical Health Radio. If there's value here, please hit that like button, let us know in a comment what your biggest takeaway was, and hit subscribe. Support the show as we support you. We'll see you soon.